So, greetings to all of you for a surprise live broadcast from Septum Sun versus
Surprise!
the World. Technically, this is more of a preview. So, I may or may not answer your comments as it goes. Just depends on when you catch us. If it's before or after we're technically doing the episode, yes. If it is after, I mean, if it's during, like if it's during the actual episode part discussion, we don't think that we're ignoring you necessarily. It's just that what we're going to do is I'm going to, when I download this, I'm going to chop this section off. I'm going to chop off the end section, and then I'm going to edit in the footage for the actual episode. So if you see this and you see the episode come up, it's going to look different. The episodes are actually so far coming out pretty good. This is our fourth episode so far that we've gotten done. And I will tell you, I am really kind of starved for real content, the content that I really did this for. But
So, Mr. Farmer, you expect to eventually have some D&D on your D&D tour?
well, I mean, it's not D&D, it's tabletop. But, you know, I would like to actually have some, like, real fun tabletop movies, not like horror stories about the evils of tabletop or or really, this isn't even much of a D&D or tabletop movie. It just kind of mentions it. So, and then the next one is not much better. I'm not going to lie. It isn't. I've actually seen the next one. It isn't going to be much better. But after that, we start getting to some of the good stuff. And consider there's 40 some episodes in this series coming up.
I came prepared, though.
You did.
I did.
So, you know, considering there's 40 some episodes in this series upcoming, you know, this is there. Hello, Mike McNally. You actually came in right when we were still accepting people who are commenting. So, but this is going to be a preview episode of what is to come. Because of weather issues, though it's sunny outside, but because of potential.
The sunnier it is at nightfall, the worse the storm's going to be.
So, you know, the potential is there for a very deadly storm brewing. So we're kind of in our own corners doing this, but we put this off enough. So we're going to go ahead and get this discussion done. So this is sort of, like I say, this is going to be a preview of things. This is going to be the unedited version of episode 4 because we're getting all the taping done today for this. What you see is what you're going to get as far as the content. So if you listen to this podcast style, you got what you got. But if you actually...
This will be like the DVD bonus content for the final product.
Yeah, but if you end up like actually watching this, you'll actually get something out of it. And hey, you never know. I might actually make DVD releases of this series. Maybe.
I'd be curious to see what the market will be. It'd be good.
So with that being said, we're going to start in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Greetings! Welcome back to another episode of Tabletop Horror. You know, by episode 4, I actually remember the name.
I believe so, yes.
Don't worry, it will leave my head yet again. I promise you. Of course, this time we're going to a different place. It's summer. We decided to go to camp. As we are doing the 2001 release Wet Hot American Summer by David Wayne. Now,
which will be appropriate given the weather that we have had the last few days and will have for the next few days.
so I'm going to put over Jake's face, I'm going to put a picture of the DVD. If there's people watching this on the live preview, you got to imagine it.
or.
Oh, you actually have a copy.
There we go. Now you can visualize the final product.
I actually have an older version of it with the basic artwork on it. So you got to see both versions of that. My version of the DVD comes with a behind-the-scenes commentary, a montage of behind-the-scenes footage, deleted scenes.
We need a montage.
Theatrical trailer, cast and crew bios, cast comments, 80 production stills with 4 original songs from the film, and the alternate fart soundtrack. I have suffered for you and watched it not once, not just the second time with the commentary, but yes, I watched it a third time with the fart soundtrack. Now, this is what you get out of the fart soundtrack. Imagine a guy doing that for the entire length of the film, and towards the end of the film, picks up a cowbell and starts ringing the cowbell a little bit, and then starts laughing at his own fart jokes as he's going towards the end. And that is the fart soundtrack.
Good deal.
Never again. It added nothing to the film. I didn't even laugh at the thing. Well, okay, no, that's wrong. I laughed when he started cracking up at his own jokes because it was so terrible. It's like, yeah, I imagine it would be funnier watching the dude having to create fart noises for the whole time. And then insert them in the film.
Good times.
But a fart soundtrack actually does definitely fit this film. So, Camp Firewood is an 8-week summer camp. But on the final day of summer, there's plenty of unfinished business to attend to. Will the summer end with a bang or with a wet fart? Both wet and fart go very well when it comes to Wet Hot American Summer.
Indeed. Now, the primary gag of this movie is that it all takes place in one day, yes, which really makes you wonder what happened the other 7.5 weeks of this camp.
Time goes slowly at camp.
What's that?
Time moves very slowly at camp. You can do a lot during camp hours.
Yes.
So we do have a cast of characters, and and several of the members have their own stories, and you follow each of their plot lines intertwined throughout the film.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to go in depth because that's already been done for us. And Inside Movies Galore, we did a nice, long, almost 2-hour discussion on the film, went through all of the plot points so that you don't have to hear it here. But we're here because it has a D&D connection.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't we do a little bit of run on the plot, but mostly we're going to concentrate on the plot involving the D&D kid.
Mm-hmm.
So before we get to the main event, excluding that plot line, which, by the way, does involve David Hyde Pierce,
mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on Wet Hot American Summer's plot? Do you feel like it was well constructed?
Ish. Given what they were going for, which is they were going on They were specifically going for a film that recreated the look, the feel, and apparently the smell of a 1980s summer camp film. And they pretty well nailed it. And 1980s summer camp films are not really known for their intricate structure and award winning screenplays and unassailable plot structure and continuity and that sort of thing. They're known for being cheesy, good fun, basically. And in that, the film succeeds. I mean, there are some jokes that fell flat. There were some jokes that didn't entirely age well. There were some incredibly weird parts, continuity issues, the fact that Wet Hot American Summer, which was supposed to take place on a hot, sunny day at the end of summer, was filmed in spring, and they apparently rained. They claimed on the commentary it rained, what was it, 25 out of 29 days or something like that.
They said the one sunny day was on the day they were supposed to get rain.
Right. So basically, there's a lot of scenes where if you look, you can see the weather. So that creates continuity issues. It's definitely a flawed and imperfect film. But again, I feel like that's what they were going for.
Yeah.
I feel like it achieved what they wanted, you know?
Well, one of the things I heard in one of the cast commentaries, I think Janine Garofalo, said, was that she was looking for a film that cinema geeks would be quoting years after it was done. And there are some. I mean, it's fun to get to town every once in a while, even if only for an hour or something like that.
Right.
That quote, that's one that, yes, I remember that quite well.
Yes, great line.
But I look at this plot line as kind of a combination between something like Kentucky Fried Movie mixed with kind of a raunchiness of the early 2000 comedies like American Pie. It definitely had the zaniness and the craziness and the odd comedy of those early 70s and 80s comedies, but had that raunchiness that was well known in the early 2000s and late 90s. And you are muted.
Ha! I'm not sure you necessarily have to make that qualification or remove it from the 80s, because remember, the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s, we still had Animal House, we still had Porky's, we definitely had some raunchy-ass comedies.
And you could say that you could combine those two types of films, the Porky-style films, with the Monty Python-esque humor.
But I do think you have a point that American Pie opened the door for films like this to get made. Yeah.
But let's move to the part of the plot that's important to this video.
Mm-hmm.
The tabletop part.
Mm-hmm.
Which isn't much, but very memorable for those of us who actually play the sport.
Well, the lead into that is that David Hyde Pierce and his wonderful fake mustache play a college associate professor, which causes him no end of grief, apparently, who happens to have a cabin on the camp grounds. And apparently in the last day of camp, he and our camp director, Janine Garofalo, go from a meet cute to basically the next day they have a kid on the way. It's a lot happens in that day. But she kicks into emotion by asking him if he'll be willing to help do some science projects with some of the kids or something. And at first for whatever reason, well, he's upset because she made a Star Trek joke, you know. And he's like, I said no. But then later he comes into the lunch mess hall and it's like, so, do y'all know where where I can find the geeky kids, the indoor kids? And they're all like, oh, over there. And so he goes over and he's like, who wants to spend the day doing science projects? And 5 of them enthusiastically raise their hands. And so that, yeah, you got several scenes of them doing various projects. He's an astrophysicist, so there's like a space deal. And that, of course, leads up to the D&D part, which one of our kids is a dungeon master.
And he introduces himself at the very beginning during the breakfast scene. And they affectionately nickname him Cape Boy, apparently behind the scenes, because he's always got like that makeshift cape around. And he apparently finally made the qualifications to be a dungeon master, which now that's a funny thing to link this, because when I started out as a dungeon master, my qualification was that nobody else wanted to be the dungeon master.
Right.
But when I ran Hackmaster briefly, actually at the gaming store that we were at, One-Eyed Jack's, Hackmaster had just come out, and they were trying to do a test run. So I actually had to take tests and get licensed as an official Hackmaster GM. I think I still have the paperwork somewhere, but you had to get officially licensed to run the game as an official GM for it. And I was one of 2 people in the area that got licensed to do it. And then just I ran that at preview night. Anybody could come in, make a character, get a feel for it, and move forward. So maybe that was what he went through. Maybe he got licensed like that, you know?
Well, you would know better than I do the history of gaming. What was Hackmaster around in the early 80s, or what would have?
Hackmaster was made as a parody of D&D for Knights of the Dinner Table magazine, or really it was on Dragon magazine and Shadis magazine where the comic first appeared. We're going to be covering actually the Knights of the Dinner Table 1 episode series later on as we go. But and then they released a real version of the rules sometime in the early 2000s. And they make a play off of basically it's between the first and second edition. And technically, since it's supposed to be 1981, this kid would be playing first edition D&D, so
right.
It makes sense. And
good deal.
Essentially, this group of kids, they do find out in space, part of Skylab broken off and was plummeting to Earth and was about to collide with the camp.
It's going to hit the rec hall, apparently.
So they created a device out of garbage cans, donuts, a grape nuts box, and so on.
As you do.
Would, locate and help divert it. But they needed a way of...
Hey, Rosie.
See, Fu used to bomb our videos way back in the time. God bless him. I guess she's taken his place since he can no longer do so. But essentially, they need that way. What can we do to randomly do numbers between 1 and 20? And every seasoned Dungeon Master knows. Actually, let me play the clip here for those of you watching the completed episode. I mean, that is just an awesome quote.
Any dungeon master worth his salt never go anywhere without his.
Yes.
20 dice. I probably misquoted it slightly, but
Well, they will have all heard the actual quote.
Right.
Nobody here that might be listening to the live version will, but you can go watch the film if you really want that.
Indeed.
When we debut this as the official episode 4, it will have that wired in. Essentially, though, they're left not being certain because this other kind of nerdy kid who thinks he pretends he's a robot the whole time shows his talent at the talent show where all heck breaks loose, and it's thought that that kind of pushed the Skylab over. So, and it seems like, according to the commentaries, that is the widely believed notion that the entire movie staff believes. So, what do you think? That is the supposed notion that yes, that is what did it, not the device.
Right.
So, what do you say? Do you feel that the D20 machine they came up with was enough to push the thing over, or do you think it was more the other guy?
Well, I mean, obviously, that machine had to be good for something. I mean, but I think I think it's one of those great mysteries of life,
Yes.
But yeah, they did seem to pretty well say that it was the wind that blew it. But it's that was some pretty strong wind if that's the case.
But yeah, that is the connecting plot that puts it here on this episode.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are your thoughts of this particular plot line?
It's amusing. It's amusing. You do have to wonder if the fact that they play him as one of the, you might say, Camp Untouchables, I guess, does have anything to do with maybe a nod to, the whole idea of the Satanic Panic and that kind of thing. Because at the time that this came out,
well, 2001.
When did Mazes and Monsters come out?
83, I believe.
But the events depicted in it were that
happened in 80, I believe.
What's that?
I think the events happened in 1980.
So this technically might have been touched by that. Like the girl's revulsion at being invited might be partly because of that.
Oh, sorry. 82 was Mazes and Monsters.
Yeah. So definitely the events therein.
So yeah, it would have happened by that point.
Yeah. So yeah, I think the fact that he got such a nasty reception when he was inviting those girls to join him, maybe that was part of the reason why, or maybe it was just typical. Oh, you're a nerd. It could have been either.
I think they were just playing it as the oh, you're a nerd. This actually came out the same year as Night Chills.
Yeah.
Boy, it's amazing what the
What's
difference
that?
it's amazing what the difference of money makes when there's, even if it's a low budget movie, it wasn't as low budget as the one we previously covered.
Yeah.
So speaking of
Night Chills.
Yeah, speaking of budget, what did you think of the production value here? What do you think of that production design?
I think again.
Yeah.
What's that?
And effects,
And effects, yes. I think given the low budget and given that they were trying to kind of homage / gentle parody movies that either had very little production budget or used it on things like the music and the actors and not really on the production value. I think they did a fine job. It doesn't have the look of, it does have the look of they had some money, but could have been worse.
And that was a pretty cool Skylab that they dropped in.
Yeah.
And for the most part, you'd have to look to know that it was a mud pit that they
Yeah,
were in.
they did a good job disguising that.
And then, of course, we gotta say that the cafeteria guy's beard, unless you were looking for it, it was hard to tell it was fake in some scenes and not in others. But knowing it, it was easier to point out.
Or like like you kind of get the feel, but you don't really. He's not the only one. Some of the characters, like in some scenes, there's a little bit of a curly cue to Dave Hyde Pierce's mustache, and some scenes it's combed straight. Multiple characters have hair that changes length as the movie goes on.
Oh yeah,
A couple of them very much so.
I mean, some scenes take place days apart within the same scene. Actually, sometimes they've had to cut in the middle of a scene and not film until a couple days later.
And again, like continuity errors, like they talked in the commentary about one scene in the lunch hall where you see Beth, Janine Garofalo's character, has the crafts counselor, who's played by Molly Shannon, on her left, and she's got the nurse, whose name I forget at the moment. And then a couple scenes later, they show it at a different angle, so you don't see Molly Shannon, but you see the nurse on her left, and it's like same scene, but they changed places apparently off screen.
So you know, they're fun little things. I don't consider it really too bad. Oddly enough, it had slipped my mind. The guy who played Coop was also the stand-up comedian, old guy.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
And I wasn't paying attention to it. A lot of people say, "Oh, it's easy to tell." Not if you're not looking for it.
Well, and that's part of the joke, really. Apparently, they originally wanted him to look really different, and I think they didn't have the budget, or what. I can't remember what they said. I think they didn't have the budget to do like prosthetics or whatever. But then at the end of the day, it's almost funnier that he looks very similar.
It was an interesting little stand-up there.
Yeah.
We had arts and crafts, or as we called it, arts and farts and crafts.
Of course, that's what you called it.
But with that being said, I think they did a pretty good job enough on the production, considering what it was. And the inconsistencies actually make for a bit of a funny return as we go. But let's talk music. There are actually 4 original songs done for this because they couldn't afford to pay for the 80s music. Wet Hot American Dream, which is kind of almost a punky tune there. Summer in America, which was definitely done in the style of 80s rap. Wet Hot American Summer, another kind of rock tune. And then Higher and Higher, definitely your typically 80s things. Take me higher.
Yeah.
That was I really
they
thought
do have a couple of notable 80s tunes. Most notably, I suppose, would be the Jane by Starship, which kicks it off. But they've got a Rick Springfield tune in there and a Kenny Loggins, and apparently Kisses Beth works its way in there barely. So they had
money.
What's that?
They just ran out of money. They didn't get all the ones they wanted, so they had to mimic some of the styles they wanted.
And you're right. Higher and Higher sounds like straight out of a 80s style, camp kind of movie. Actually, it sounds like it would have been right at home in something like Ernest Goes to Camp or something like that,
So I think that overall, I like the music. I think that's got the 80s vibe, and even the ones that they created for it felt well at home in the whole of the movie. So, in summation, Wet Hot American Summer is quite the comedic role. It pulls from various types of comedy, a la Porky's or American Pie, Monty Python, maybe other ones such as The Groove Tube or Kentucky Fried Movie. A lot of that zany, strange humor, but with a much dirtier bent to it.
The
And,
Porkies?
well, Porky's or even National Lampoon's.
Well, I mean, you saying dirty or bent? I'm like, I don't know. Porky's was pretty friggin' dirty.
Well, then again, you saw some of the deleted scenes, right?
No, I didn't actually. I know what some of them were because they talked about them when they.
I mean, one of the deleted scenes, the guy who's basically got his morning wood showing as he's walking in his underwear down in the camps.
Okay, they were talking about that in the behind the scenes, like
Yes.
what was it? Michael Showalter and was it David Wayne he was talking to? I can't remember.
I don't know. They had a stunt person playing that guy's the guy for his particular set of skills. They definitely wanted to make it
hire the guy from
dirtier than it really was. So
what was his name? Was it Dirk Diggler?
It was the guy. The guy that he was supposed to be was the guy that the main girl was in love with.
Yeah.
And of course, having her have that line is like, it's like, do you want to sit on my face or something like that, or little lines like that. So yeah, I'd say that if it was allowed to be as dark as it wanted to be, like if the guy instead of throwing the kids out of the van was killing the kids like they originally wanted, I think that it would have been just as dark and dirty as probably Porky's had they been given the free rein.
Yeah.
But at the end of it all, I think it's a decent enough comedy romp that just is fun. And it even mentions D&D in a good way, which we haven't had a good way since we started here. So I guess in a way...
I mean that in a good way.
In a way, it's good to have a good mention of D&D in a positive for once.
Mm-hmm.
So good on that. So what is your summary statement of this?
Well, I mean, like I said, it's a pretty solid 80s romp, 80s style, I should say, because it's not actually 80s, but they did a really good job capturing the feel of it. There, as a you don't want my commentary yet on it as a D&D movie, right?
No, we're gonna do that later.
Okay. But generally, you can get more detail again from our movies galore discussion. But generally, I like it. I think that some of it, like I said, not all of it aged well. I probably found it much more funny when it first came out than I do now. But now it almost does have the nostalgia factor going for it. And nostalgia is huge with these kind of movies. So it is a fun one. It's really fun. As I said on the Movies Galore discussion, it's instructive as a time capsule kind of film. Because you had all these people in it. Janine Garofalo was huge on the indie circuit at the time. David Hyde Pierce was huge on Frasier at the time. Molly Shannon and Amy Poehler were coming off of successful SNL runs. This is literally Bradley Cooper's first movie, and he had only a few roles before that. Paul Rudd, Elizabeth Banks. I feel like there's at least 2 or 3 other notable ones were just kind of coming into their own. People were just learning who they were, So it was really, for a couple of people, like at the top of the game, and a couple of people is really like, if we what Mazes and Monsters was for Tom Hanks, this was for Bradley Cooper, basically. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting to see where did they get their start,
True enough.
So it's fun for that, and I love Jane. So any movie that can kick off with Jane gets me started off in the right spirit, you know. So it's a fun movie. Again, not one I would wholeheartedly recommend to just anyone. Yeah.
So now we're at the last part of this
Mm-hmm.
where we rank this. We give it a rating. We give 2 ratings. We give a tabletop rating and a LARPing rating because those are the 2 types of films that we're watching here. So, with 1 being none and 10 being it's as close to the material as possible, that the material feels accurate and that there's definitely a what's the word? It's definitely a focus on the material. So
Okay.
I will give the tabletop part of it a 3 uh, because it was mentioned. They had a D20, and it was a positive mention, which is nice. But it was like 10% of the film, if that. And that's a generous run of it. And nobody actually played D&D. It was just mentioned that he was a GM, and they rolled the D20, but not like as a GM or a D20. So I give it a 3, as it's mentioned. It's definitely mentioned by name. So I'm not gonna give it a 1, but I'll give it a 3 because there's a lot less tabletop in this. Actually, there's a lot less tabletop in this than any of the films we've watched so far. Because even in Skullduggery, yeah, what they were playing was not necessarily there, but they were role playing, and it was tabletop, and it was involved in the movie. So yeah, that's about as high as I can give it for that. What do you say?
So you would say 3 shall be the number of the rating, and the number of the rating shall be 3.
Yes.
4 thou shalt not rate. No, wait. I can go with that. I feel like 3 it might even be a generous rating,
Yeah.
overly generous rating. But on the
D&D
other
saved
hand,
the world, so
what's that?
the D&D saved the camp.
The D&D did save the camp. So while its role was small, it was important. So we can give it that. And as you said, it was essentially a positive mention, so that's a good thing. Um, the Yeah, I'll go with 3.
So the next one, we're talking about rounding, and what I'm probably going to do is for our individual numbers, we'll round down, but for our final scores, we'll round up for when we combine.
Okay.
For LARPing, what LARPing? Maybe I give it a 1.5 because the guy was wearing a cape. So that goes down to 1 at the end of it all. But that's about as far as I can. That's about as much as I can give it.
Yeah. The fact that he was wearing a cape, that's definitely not what one would consider normal street clothes. So one will say he definitely was dressing up for the game. But yeah, it's I think you could say 1, but that's almost stretching it. Yeah.
Well, 1's none, so yeah, 1 is none. So,
Yeah.
I
Oh, I see. Oh, right. You're going 1 to 10.
Yep. 1 is the lowest it can get. I gave it a 1.5 because of the cape.
Yeah. Well, if we have to do whole integers, I'll go ahead and give it a 2 then, I guess. But yeah, that's because I do think it was more than 0. But yeah, we'll go with that then, 2.
So the final scores are a 3 for the tabletop and a 2 for LARPing. So
Is it a 2?
yeah, because 1 and 2.
Oh, you said you're rounding up, right?
Roundup, yeah.
Sorry. Okay.
So yeah. So with that being said,
Mm-hmm.
kind of low on the end there.
Yeah.
We may see a rise in the next one.
May.
May being an operative term. I think we will see a rise. It's not going to be a meteoric rise.
Meh.
It's not going to be like one of those like, ooh, well, yeah, definitely. But our next film is going to be about Vampire the Masquerade as we go forward in time. Not a jump like from Skullduggery, because really and truly, that jump, we really did. We kind of just walked a step from Mazes of Monsters to Skullduggery, and then we jumped from 83 to 2001 when we hit Night Chills. But now we've gone out of 2001 all the way to 2002 and get ready for a lot of density in the next number of episodes. A lot of different D&D movies coming out during this time period. But during the next, I'd say it's thick on there for from 2001 all the way up to 2017. We've had pretty much a ton of solid D&D stuff. So we've got a lot of
Cool.
stuff going. But we're going to be covering a film called Eternal Blood. So I hope y'all will join us for episode 5 when we finally run into the Vampire the Gathering series. And hopefully for a little while, step out of the D&D linked with, or tabletop linked with horror section into something a little bit more pleasant.
All right.
So we'll see you on the next one. Well, looks like we don't have anybody left watching. But for those of you who are here for the live, I hope you've enjoyed this particular preview of tabletop horror. We might do a couple more previews as time goes on. Basically, anytime I feel like that Jake is like unable to come over here and we have to do this on the line, I might decide to throw this as and do it live. I mean, I got to film it and record it anyway, so why not do it live and get a couple of views on activity on the site. But we're going to edit the first part and this part out, and I'm going to put in, as I have for the previous episodes, I'm going to edit in scenes from the film, or cute little funny cutscenes and all that stuff. It's going to be, pretty fun stuff. I think you're going to enjoy it when it finally does release. As I say, I might even have to do these as a series release, like a limited Blu-ray or DVD release.
Nice.
Which I might do. I might do these in seasons and see what sells.
Okay.
Well, with that being said, I hope you've enjoyed that free preview, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye, guys.
Bye.